I'm certain you've lived through this moment before. You've just snapped a picture after a great night out. You're about to share it online, and then it hits. A subtle twist in your stomach, a quiet ache somewhere deeper, and a voice inside asks, "Why am I doing this?" Some people brush it off, thinking, "Whatever," and post it anyway. Others pause, catch that fleeting moment of awareness, and turn it into something else. They put their phone down and reclaim the experience. So the question becomes, what separates these two types of people? This is the psychology behind those who choose not to post their photos in a world where sharing no longer feels optional. To understand what sets them apart and what can be learned from them, it's necessary to look at how this behavior even began. Posting photos on social platforms wasn't always tied to anxiety or second thoughts. In the early days, it felt exciting. It was a way to connect, to share glimpses of life with friends and family across distances. Platforms like MySpace and Facebook carried a kind of innocence. There was no rigid identity attached to them. People experimented, shared freely, and shaped the culture as they went. But as time passed and these platforms expanded, something shifted. What began as genuine sharing slowly transformed into a silent competition, a pursuit of attention, validation, and numbers. Likes, comments, followers, they started to matter more than the moment itself. Soon enough, authenticity began to fade. Everything started to feel calculated. People no longer posted because they wanted to, but because they felt they should. The goal became optimization rather than expression. Psychologically, this shift reflects a move from intrinsic motivation to extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation comes from genuine enjoyment from within. Extrinsic motivation, on the other hand, is driven by external rewards or the avoidance of judgment. It slowly erodes individuality, replacing personal expression with performance. In trying to avoid being seen as awkward or irrelevant, people begin to lose touch with what feels real to them. Compared to the early 2010s, posting today feels less like sharing and more like staging a performance. Even simple experiences carry this weight. Imagine sitting down for a meal you've been anticipating for hours. Just as you're about to take the first bite, someone stops you, pulls out their phone, and begins arranging the scene. Angles are adjusted, lighting is considered, multiple shots are taken, not to preserve the memory, but to present it. The intention shifts from living the moment to displaying it. It becomes less about enjoyment and more about signaling a lifestyle. Even recognizing this dynamic doesn't free you from it. The pressure remains, subtle but persistent. There exists an invisible threshold, an unspoken standard that people feel compelled to meet. You don't always notice it until it suddenly surfaces in moments of hesitation. This tension between internal satisfaction and external validation becomes especially clear in what can be described as the photographer's paradox. Picture yourself at an event you genuinely enjoy, maybe a concert where every note resonates perfectly. You're fully immersed, completely present. Then a thought interrupts. You haven't taken a photo yet. Suddenly, the experience feels incomplete, without proof. Your focus shifts from feeling the moment to capturing it. That is where the paradox reveals itself. The need to document and prove that you were there, that you had a good time, begins to diminish the value of the experience itself. You are no longer just a participant. You become both observer and performer at the same time. The act of living and the act of presenting start to conflict. The desire to create something for yourself clashes with the pressure to perform for an unseen audience. This tension only dissolves when the need to share every experience is abandoned. Otherwise, the cycle continues endlessly, fueled by an attention-driven system designed to keep you engaged without ever offering a real sense of completion. Not everyone recognizes this dynamic, and even fewer step away from it. Yet the decision to withdraw from this pattern has been understood long before the digital age. Philosophical thought has long explored the struggle between individuality and conformity. The idea that the crowd often pulls people away from their authentic selves becomes even more relevant in a world shaped by algorithms. What once was a collective social influence has now evolved into a system that actively studies behavior and reinforces it. The pressure is no longer just social, it is engineered. In such an environment, insecurity becomes a resource. It drives consumption, engagement, and continuous participation. If the collective suggests that your phone is outdated, you feel the urge to upgrade. If it implies you're lacking in some way, solutions appear immediately, often packaged as products or trends. With so much external noise dictating perception, it becomes increasingly difficult to hear anything internal. The line between personal desire and imposed expectation begins to blur. This is where some individuals begin to question participation altogether. Choosing not to engage in this cycle can feel like a quiet act of resistance. It's not loud, not performative, but intentional. It reflects an awareness that constant participation is not mandatory. In a system built on visibility, choosing not to be seen carries its own kind of meaning. It disrupts the expectation. It refuses to feed the mechanism. In that sense, silence becomes a form of expression, not absence. It represents a decision to prioritize experience over display, presence over performance. However, stepping away from this norm comes with its own risks. It is possible to become defined by the rejection itself, turning it into another form of identity performance. If the act of not posting becomes a statement meant to be seen or validated, it loses its authenticity. The intention shifts again, this time in the opposite direction. Instead of performing for approval, one begins performing resistance. The balance lies in detaching from both extremes, neither consumed by participation nor defined by its rejection. Human behavior is complex, yet often predictable. Telling someone to abandon social habits entirely rarely works. People understand the implications, but they still choose engagement. It's similar to small indulgences people are aware of but unwilling to give up. Social platforms function in much the same way, especially for younger generations. For many, these spaces are not optional additions, but integrated parts of daily life. They shape communication, identity, and social belonging. Acting without an audience feels unnatural when the environment has conditioned constant observation. There is also the concept of the imaginary audience, a psychological tendency where individuals feel as though they are constantly being watched or evaluated. This idea becomes amplified in digital spaces. Even when alone, the awareness of potential visibility influences behavior. Actions are filtered through an imagined perception. This is evident in language, trends, and even communication styles that originate online but spill into real-world interactions. Conversations begin to carry the tone of performance, as if every moment holds the potential to be shared, clipped, or observed. The burden of this constant performance gradually shapes identity. Posting is no longer just an action, it becomes a form of self-definition. Every image, caption, and interaction contributes to a constructed version of the self. Over time, this version becomes fixed, almost rigid. Expectations form around it, both from others and from within. Deviation from this established identity feels risky, as if it might disrupt the perception that has been carefully built. Yet outside of this digital framework, identity is naturally fluid. It adapts depending on context, relationships, and environment. In one setting, you might be expressive and loud, full of humor and spontaneity. In another, you become focused, reserved, driven by different priorities. These variations are natural, yet the digital version of identity often struggles to accommodate them. It demands consistency, coherence, and predictability. The more defined it becomes, the more fragile it feels. Any shift risks creating cracks in the image. This creates an ongoing pressure to maintain alignment between who you are and who you appear to be, even when those two versions begin to drift apart. That's also who you become around coworkers and even family. Yet, the average well-known figure on social media is almost never allowed the space to have a negative fan interaction. The moment it happens, it's treated as a violation of the identity people have built around them. That's one of the reasons A-list actors like Jennifer Lawrence and Scarlett Johansson have openly chosen to stay away from social media. It isn't about thinking they're above it. It's more of a professional decision. Their work depends on being a blank canvas, someone the audience can believe as an entirely different character in every role they take on. For actors who are active online, that separation becomes harder to maintain. There's a strong link between their real personality and the roles they play. Ryan Reynolds often feels like he's just playing himself because audiences have seen so much of his personality online. Deadpool almost blends into Ryan Reynolds entirely. The same pattern appears with Dwayne Johnson and even many of the newer generation of actors. For those who intentionally stay offline, there's a clear understanding that sometimes the strongest presence comes from deliberate absence rather than constant visibility. Posting on social platforms doesn't just lead to identity crystallization. For many, it creates a kind of pigeonhole effect. Building a following often means sticking to a niche, which seems beneficial at first. But over time, that niche can turn into a limitation. You become known for one specific thing, and stepping outside of it feels risky. If you're known for promoting body positivity, even a small moment of self-doubt could cost you followers. At that point, you're no longer seen as a full human being. You're reduced to a product tied to a brand identity. When someone chooses not to share their life and photos online, it's more than just breaking a habit. It becomes a kind of escape, a release from the rigid version of themselves that social media creates. It allows them to return to a more flexible and evolving sense of identity. While it might seem like people who avoid posting are rare, that assumption doesn't hold up. In reality, internet culture has long followed a pattern known as the 1% rule. Only a small fraction of users actively create content, a slightly larger group interacts, and the vast majority simply observe. Today, even that quiet majority is shifting further away from participation. People who once posted occasionally are now deleting their content altogether. A 2023 survey revealed that nearly half of Gen Z remove posts if they don't receive enough engagement, and a significant portion avoid posting entirely due to fear of judgment. This doesn't necessarily mean they've abandoned social media completely. Instead, their behavior is changing. The shift is moving from broad public sharing to more controlled and private interactions. This is where smaller, curated spaces come into play. Private accounts, close friend lists, and alternate profiles allow people to share without exposing themselves to a wider audience. Temporary content has also become more popular. Features like stories on platforms such as Instagram, TikTok, WhatsApp, and Snapchat disappear after a short time, removing the pressure of permanence. What's emerging is a quieter type of user, someone who exists within the system but refuses to fully engage with its rules. Even so, avoiding visibility doesn't make someone immune to the effects of social media. There's an irony in how things appear. From the outside, it looks like everyone is actively participating, constantly posting and engaging. But in reality, a large portion of users remain silent. This unseen majority holds more influence than it seems. If their behavior continues to shift, it could eventually impact the entire structure of these platforms, including the companies that depend on constant engagement. In a culture that rewards exposure, choosing to hold something back becomes a form of discipline. In a generation shaped by endless comparison, keeping parts of your life private becomes one of the few ways to maintain independence. The world is gradually moving toward a space where personal experiences are continuously collected, analyzed, and reflected back through algorithms. Every action feeds into a system designed to predict and influence behavior. Choosing not to post, even in small moments, can be a way to step outside of that system. It allows experiences to exist without being measured, categorized, or turned into data. If you've ever kept a memory just for yourself, without the need to share or prove it, that holds value. It doesn't mean you're disappearing or becoming irrelevant. It may simply mean that the most authentic version of you is the one that remains untouched by the system, the part that exists without needing to be seen or validated.